with our Creating Conflict series. Today we're going to talk about protagonist conflict, which will include internal conflict and external struggles. As readers, we vicariously take part in enormously emotional events when we're reading books, such as murder, affairs, love, adoption, scandals, deaths, violence, grief, happiness even. But as human beings, we long for order from the chaos when the same events happen in the real world. Reading is supposed to be relaxing. It's a way of removing yourself from life's problems and putting yourself into another world for a short amount of time. So our readers love to read a story that is complete and resolved by the end of the book. We create scenes and situations that draw the reader in, changing the characters, whether it's for better or for worse. Internal conflict is something that almost everyone will have experienced at some point in their lives, and it's something that's well worth incorporating as part of your character's personality, motivation, or for creating conflict. Internal conflict and emotions can manifest in a number of ways. Guilt, horror, fear, past experiences, loss, grief, worry, all of these can be used as motivators to show the reasons behind a character's actions, words and choices. Being intentionally misled is another popular way of creating conflict within a story, and it's generally perpetrated by the main antagonist of the story, although it can also include someone close to the character who has good intentions. For an antagonist, think of someone that might be trying to trick your main character into selling a property at a ridiculously low price, or a love rival that's told lies in an attempt to break up a couple. Think of a corporation that's deliberately withholding information about land, assets, or a job. For a friend or a family member with good intentions, think along the lines of maybe the main character finding out that they were adopted, or that their child isn't really theirs. Someone who tells them that they have suspicions about the main character's partner when in reality they're doing nothing wrong, or someone that mishears information and passes it along in an attempt to help. The idea is for the main character to think that they're making the right decision when in reality they aren't, and this causes conflict and problems for them in the future. Assuming something about someone is something that almost everyone should be able to write, mostly because it's something that we do ourselves on a regular basis, no matter how much we might deny it. We all make assumptions based on our opinions and past experiences, and this can affect our daily lives, and it's exactly the same for our characters. Think along the lines of someone making a judgment on someone they've just met based on their clothes, their accent, their music choice, their religion, their sexuality. There's so many things that we all use as a way of making an assumption about people that we meet. If someone is dressed in a provocative way, it's usually assumed that they're going to be a little bit loose with their affections, when in reality they could still be a virgin that just likes those clothes. If someone is dressed in a gothic style, it's assumed that they're going to be a miserable person that's obsessed with like death and darkness. Where I'm what I would like to call a chirpy goth. I'm a happy goth. I'm very rarely ever miserable, and I'm definitely not obsessed with darkness and death. Just goth is me. If someone is a biker, they can be seen as troublemakers or criminals, all tough guys that are going to beat people up. Someone that's big and muscular could be seen as tough, when really they could be very sensitive. A smaller woman could be seen as weak, same as a geeky male could be seen as a little bit of a pushover or someone that's quite weak or weedy. Someone's sexuality can be assumed, which could lead to embarrassment for the main character. All of these are assumptions about someone's personality, their trustability and beliefs that will colour how your main character interacts with them, how they treat them and how they value them. All of this can be used to advance your story, especially the fallouts of these assumptions. For example, if a woman assumes that a man is straight but he isn't, she could flirt with him, she could try to seduce him. But in the end, she would be the one that would end up embarrassed or maybe even angry, and she could accuse him of lying or leading her on, even though it's not his fault. The same could work in a reverse gender setting. Maybe it's the man that's pursuing a woman and he gets angry and maybe physically abusive when she turns him down. He could also get very rude verbally and possibly quite crude. In today's climate, we see a lot of prejudice against certain religions and races, and that could also come out in your story. It might not even have to be your main character that has these assumptions, but it could be someone that they meet who is judging them. And your story is about how they deal with these assumptions. Assuming that nothing will change in a situation or problem. This is conflict that can be written as a simple thing or something that could be an issue throughout your entire story. What if someone is unhappy in their relationship and assumes that their partner won't change, so they leave them? Maybe without even having spoken to them about their issues or their needs. What if the partner would have been more than willing to change, but they were never given the chance? What if your main character never speaks to their boss about an idea that they have to fix a problem, assuming that the boss won't do anything to help? What if your main character doesn't go to the doctor about their health issues, believing that nothing would help them anyway? What if they don't want to move house or town because they believe that nothing will change in their life if they do? What about if they don't apply for that new job? Ignoring the facts so they don't have to change their opinions on a situation. This is something that many people are guilty of, and your characters will be exactly the same. And if they aren't, then really, you have a problem. The most important thing when creating your characters is to make them as real, believable and relatable as possible. Your readers want to read characters with depth and flaws and problems just like they have. If your characters are always perfect and they've got no issues whatsoever, they will be boring and two-dimensional, and that is not what you want. Imagine your main character or another main characters, maybe the antagonist, is very set in their ways. I haven't written this very well. Imagine that your main character or another one of the main characters, maybe the antagonist, is very set in their ways. They believe that something is a certain way, and no matter how much someone tries to change their mind or explain the facts, it doesn't work. They are steadfast in their beliefs, but those beliefs can cause them to alienate people or to prevent them from moving on. Think along the lines of a racist or homophobic or sexist parent, a partner, a neighbour, boss or even a friend. Think of someone who believes that someone is out to get them and won't listen to reason. It can be a big thing or a small thing. It could be as big as someone who won't fly on a plane, and no matter how safe they know that it really is, and because of that they miss a wedding or someone's last days if they're very ill. They could refuse to have a mobile phone because they believe the government's after them, and because of this they get lost and they can't get traced. It could be a small thing like someone who won't read a book because they think they don't like that genre. Anything that creates a disagreement or a difference of opinion, anything that can make life a little bit awkward, counts as conflict. Assuming that everyone thinks or believes the same things that they do. This is another thing that is so common in real life. The assumption that everybody thinks the same way you do, and it can cause problems. Imagine if your main character has really strong moral ethics and believes that everyone else has the same moral code. They could get very hurt or wronged by someone that doesn't. What if your main character believes that they're in an exclusive relationship, even though they haven't specifically discussed it, yet then they find their love interest out on a date with somebody else? What if they really like someone and think that they like them too, but then they overhear this person say nasty things about them? What if your main character believes in ghosts but nobody else does? What if your main character's mother believes that the main character wants to go to university to become a doctor, but they don't? Then they want to go into teacher training. The possibilities are endless. Assuming the reason that someone acts the way they do. We've already learned that making assumptions about people is not the way to win friends and influence people. Yet it happens day in and day out. The next thing we're going to discuss is assuming that they know the reasons that someone acts the way they do. Imagine that you're writing a character that is never in a serious relationship, someone who just dates really, really casually. And then they meet someone who really likes them, but doesn't do casual relationships. You could have the love interest assuming that they aren't good enough to settle down with, when in reality the casual dater could have been in love and been left, could be cheated on, or maybe their partner died. They got really, really hurt. They refused to care about anyone again. Or maybe they saw their parents split up, so that's why they won't get married. So, okay, imagine that you have a character that is nasty to everybody. Your main character could assume that they're just an arsehole. I mean, personally, I'd probably assume that. But then, once you scratch the surface, you can find out stuff about them, and you can then reveal that maybe they've been betrayed by a friend, and so they're never going to let anyone close to them again. Imagine someone that is against anyone with money. They assume they don't know any hardships and that they're selfish and cruel, but in reality they're not. Assuming the reasons for someone's behaviour and showing prejudice from a main character in regards to them with their thoughts and actions is a really good way to lead a reader in a certain direction and to have the reader assuming the same. But then you can reveal the reason for their behaviour or have them change their behaviour, and you can shock both your main character and your readers. Another way to create really good conflict is to have a character putting too much trust in someone. We've all been there. We've all met someone new and they seem like the best thing ever. They're so nice, they're so helpful, they are just perfect. But then, inevitably, they screw you over in the worst possible way because you trusted them too soon. Let's look at some examples. What about that estate agent that was so helpful in taking that old broken down house off of your MC that they inherited, but it turns out that they're actually related to the people that bought the house that knew there was a Viking horde under there? What about that new friend that helped your main character to get their new job, but they were only doing it because they wanted them to move away so they could move on to their boyfriend? That record producer that was so helpful, well, he put a clause in the contract that means that your main character's song lyrics are now his property and he's given their song to somebody else. A betrayal of trust is a wonderful story element to add conflict. The only limit, once again, is your imagination. Imagine that you've got a main character that is so sure of themselves, or maybe so lazy, that they don't bother to find out the full facts or to know all about a situation. It's a great way to create conflict within your story. This could work in a number of ways. It could cause the main character to make a mistake in believing somebody or in how they treat someone, the decision that they make, or how they act. They can end up feeling so bad they punish themselves, or they go the other way and they can get very, very defensive, which will have a roll-on effect on how they react or how they act with the people involved in that situation. Assuming that everyone has the same beliefs that they do can lead to a main character or an antagonist seeing someone in a totally different light or feeling like they're out of control with the situation. So assuming that someone is Christian when they aren't could lead to misunderstandings and hurt feelings. Assuming that someone eats meat when they don't could be problematic if they invite them out for a romantic dinner. Assuming that someone supports the same political party is always a good way to create conflict. Assuming that someone has the same political moral views often leads to drama and fallings out. I mean, come on, we see that in everyday life all the time. Most people cannot deal with talking about politics with their friends because they always end up in arguments. All of this can have a massive impact on the relationships between your characters. It can change how they view each other, how they act around each other, or even how much they value the other's company, how much they value their opinions or their position in their life. Along the same lines as assuming that everyone has the same beliefs, so is assuming that everyone will act the same way that they do. Think along the lines of a character that's racist and attacks everyone that is different to them. They could start a new job and they could act in their usual horrible way and find that everyone in the office turns against them because of their actions. They assume that everyone felt the same way that they did about that race and that everyone was nasty to them, because that's just what you do, right? That's just how they were brought up. But in reality, that's not how the rest of the world is. That's just them. What about different cultures and how they act? For example, I'm English, obviously, and handguns and the like are mostly banned here. So it's, as a normal, everyday person, the last thing on my mind when I'm in a negative situation is to pull out a gun, because I've never even held one or seen a handgun in the flesh. It's just not done here. Yet I've got friends in America and other countries that own them, and they are like as common as having a pet hamster is here. Okay, I would never think to take control of a situation with a gun. And honestly, I'd probably be shocked if somebody did. Yet someone that's used to having a gun would be really shocked that I didn't. They'd assume that everybody uses a gun that way, whereas I assume that no one has them, and I'm really shocked when they are. What about someone that's very aggressive by nature? They might act in an aggressive, threatening way to like a waitress who got their order wrong and assume that that's just the way that everybody acts. They would be surprised, and maybe they judge your main character if they just let the bad service go without making a fuss, whereas the nicer person will be shocked at how the aggressive person had acted. When we see someone act in a way that isn't the norm in our opinion, or it isn't how we do something, it shocks us and we make a judgment on that. It can change how we see someone, good or bad, and likely permanently. Your characters and your story is no different. All of these suggestions are just examples of ways to create conflict that comes directly from your characters, and it's almost secondary to the situation that's going on around them, yet it's still a really important part of your story. Readers want to be able to relate to characters, and if they never make mistakes, if they don't act like normal people do, then your readers will not engage. They won't feel anything for the characters, and they likely won't be invested in the story, so they're unlikely to stick it out to the end. Even if they do, then they'll likely feel dissatisfied with it or like something was missing. Don't be that writer. Use your characters as well as the background situation and the story. So until next time, thanks for being here. Once again, blessed be and happy writing.